The man behind the Junk Science Twitter account who posted that 101-year-old article is Steve Milloy, and he joins us right now. Steve, you're like salve to the soul, honest to God. Like, we need you so badly just to spell out what we know is true, because the climate crazies have never been right, but they continue to cry wolf season after season, weather event after weather event. If we were having hurricanes this season like we have in other seasons in Florida, they'd be blaming that on climate. If we were having record cool temperatures, Steve, they'd be blaming that on climate problems too, would they not?
Yeah, so thanks for having me, Dr. Gina. Look, it's never waste a crisis. Yeah, it's hot, very hot in Europe today, and it's very hot in the Midwest, in the U.S. Midwest today. But guess what? It's cooler in Africa and Eastern Europe and Asia. And if you look at the whole globe, the con is called global warming, after all. We're less than a half degree warmer today than the 1979 to 2000 average. And that's despite all the greenhouse gas emissions and all the horrible things that they predicted that never happened. So there's really not much, global warming going on today. Yeah, it's hot in Europe, but it's cool elsewhere. And you don't see that reported in the media at all.
Yeah, and someone pointed out, it could have even been you, and just me perusing all the total BS about this, frankly. Sorry, I don't use that word very often, but I got to use it here. That they've changed on the weather maps. The hot areas on the weather maps used to be reflected in yellow, but now they're red. They changed the color on the weather maps. You can't make this stuff up, Steve.
Well, it's all part of their psychological ploys. I mean, look, these are communists, and they work on our psyches. And they're destroying children's minds. They've destroyed the educational curriculum. They've captured every institution. They are at total war with the rest of us. They are bent, as you sort of alluded to this earlier, they are bent on controlling us. And one of the ways they're trying to do that, COVID, they tried COVID, had a lot of success with it, but climate is really the big game, because through climate and energy and the economy, you control everything. So they've got to scare enough people quick enough so that they can grab power. But you know what? The whole thing is really kind of melting down. Just recently, the New York Times had a poll, amid all the insanity going on in the world today, the energy crisis, the war in Ukraine, everything else that's going on, only 1% in a New York Times poll, only 1% of voters prioritize climate. 0% in the 45 to 64 age group, 0% among Latinos, 0% among Republicans, 1% among everybody else. I mean, it's really something.
But as they try, Steve, to connect the crises, right? They try to say that, that the invasion on the border is actually just a symptom of climate change, because so many people need to migrate to the U.S. illegally because their climates are having problems, food shortages, whatever. As the government continues to exacerbate food shortages, to destroy and take over small farms, to take away land for national reserves. The list goes on and on, to mess with our water, and all the rest of the things. Then they continue to blame all of this on climate. So it worries me, Steve, that the sheeple of this world will fall for the things they're doing to exacerbate problems that they can then blame on climate. Because if climate becomes the reason why we have inflation, the reason why gas prices are high, right? The reason why we have an invasion of millions of people on our southern border, then people might start to care if they fall for that lie. How do we, as people who actually have brains and can think and can do math and understand science well enough to know they're lying, how do we battle back at that effort?
Well, you've already taken the first step. You follow me on Twitter, so I mean, look, it's my job. There's a bunch of people like me that try to debunk this stuff as we go along. And not only do we debunk the facts, we debunk the motivations. Joe Biden is not out there trying to make gasoline prices cheaper. He's not actually trying to control inflation, because what Democrats want is to wreck our society. And why do they want to wreck our society? They want to wreck it because out of that wreckage and out of that chaos, what do people do? They hunger for more government control. And that's exactly what they want. And they are going to wreck our society. This is their MO. This started out with the Russian Revolution. They did the same thing. Now they're doing it to us. And, they do it climate, education, the border. They just want to cause chaos. Look, they're not out there solving problems. Name me one problem Joe Biden is trying to solve. Everything he's done is to make gas prices higher, which he knows feeds inflation. It's all intentional.
Yeah. Steve, Senator Joe Manchin threw a big wrench into the plans of the radical left when he said he's not going to go along with the climate crazy that the radical left had hoped to ram through before midterms. What exactly did Joe Manchin save us from, if you can analyze?
Well, Joe Manchin has saved us twice from this Build Back Better monstrosity of Biden's. Last year, the Build Back Better included this provision to basically federalize the electricity grid, through which Joe Biden hoped to, meet his goal of cutting our emissions in half by 2030 per the Paris Climate Accord. Joe Biden drew the line there because Joe Biden, look, is from West Virginia. West Virginia depends on coal and natural gas, as the rest of our economy does. So this year, so they gave up on trying to control the electricity grid, and they put in, hundreds of billions of dollars for green energy subsidies, windmills and solar panels and electric cars. And Joe Biden just said, look, we've got too much inflation. We can't afford this nonsense. And I think, Joe Manchin has a good sense of what's going on with climate. And, as it's turned out, he is the Democrat John McCain. And thank God for that, because he has saved us from some abominable policies.
Yeah. Well, he's likely to see some formidable opponents. We actually have some in our chat on Getter coming up in his next election, because he is a Democrat. You point out Joe Manchin is a Democrat, and he's doing this because he knows he can't win re-election if he alienates his base, which, as you pointed out, is very opposed to him, to the Democrat groupthink, if you will, in West Virginia, where they have a lot of money and livelihoods tied to making sure that ridiculous things like this Green New Deal don't actually take place. It would destroy places like Joe Manchin's district. But since he's sunk their hopes, Steve, Biden is planning to go ahead and sign some climate executive orders tomorrow. Tell us about what he's planning.
Well, so it's unclear, but Biden's been under pressure to declare some sort of climate national emergency through which he would hope to use his executive power somehow. Of course, this comes just as the Supreme Court said, you know what, Biden administration, you can't really do anything on climate until Congress allows you to. And Congress is not allowing, the executive branch of the Biden administration to do anything on climate. But Joe Biden is going to try anyway because he doesn't care what the court says. He thinks it's illegitimate. It's really unclear. He may declare an emergency tomorrow, but perversely that would give him the power to maybe cancel oil drilling on federal lands. And does he really want to do that? Because then gas prices are really going to go through the roof. So it's a lot of sound and fury. I don't really think he can do anything, but that doesn't mean he's not going to try. And as I mentioned earlier, these people are like termites trying to destroy the fabric of our country and wreck our society. So I don't think they can do much, but we'll have to see.
Steve, you also tweeted your Junk Science Twitter account today, a New York Times op-ed by Paul Krugman, and he wrote that climate politics are worse than you think, cited this poll that you mentioned before, that only 1% of voters even prioritize climate, but they sure seem loud for being only 1%, don't they? and the media gives them credence as if they were 80%, right?
Yeah. Well, I think the 1% is the media, right? I mean, that's the only way this can be done. Look, last year there was an article. A Democrat pollster told the New York Times that climate really only appeared to a very small segment of very weird white liberal people, and to nobody else. And that's exactly what is made up in the media. I fight this stuff every day. It's the same people saying the same things, while the rest of us have real concerns: gas prices, inflation, etc. it's climate is really a weird thing. There is this subset of very powerful people, the elites, the World Economic Forum, those people, John Kerry, and they insist on driving the climate truck forward where no one else is, climate bus, no one is on board except them.
Yeah, it's so true. I have to tell you, I can't believe you're on Twitter. I can't believe. I don't know how you've hidden and stayed on there because so many people like you who put facts out. Yeah.
Yeah. Not too long ago, the Washington Post actually called Twitter and Facebook, called them up and said, why is this guy on Twitter? Why is he a blue check? He should not be. Somehow I survived all that, and, I'm just a happy warrior.
A happy warrior. Well, that's so true about our site, isn't it? That we are the happy ones. And that's what makes him absolutely crazy. Steve Milloy, make sure you follow him on Twitter. Give him even more credibility out there. I have to ask, are you on Getter and Truth Social as well?
No, I'm battling it out on Twitter. That's where my opponents are, and I face them down every day, and I enjoy it, drive them crazy. They block me, and I'm having a good time.
Well, I have to tell you, I have to encourage you to get on some of these others. Clout Hub is a great one, too, where, that's where you're like little small microphones are following you around if you get on there. So, all right. Well, thank you for being with us. Everybody go follow him at Junk Science on Twitter and encourage him to get on some of these other places, what we enjoy as well. Coming up.